Have you ever longed to be able to talk about values and morals or faith and spirituality without feeling judged? Hi, and welcome to our podcast, Mindful Moments, Insights to Empower the Soul. This podcast will empower you to embrace your true self. I'm Dr. Debi Gilmore.
I'm Sharilyn Green. We are marriage and family therapists, humans with a passion for personal growth and well-being. And I'm excited about our topic today and how it relates to the complexity of our deepest relationships.
Do you ever feel guilty or shameful in those moments when you strongly disagree with your partner's opinions on something? Well, that's normal. Do you find yourself wanting to shy away from your own opinion for fear that you'll seem controlling or inflexible? I had one couple that came in, and the wife actually in this case said that she doesn't want to be seen as the nag, but she also wants to be strong. And in fact, her husband said to her, I want you to have a strong opinion, but she was so afraid to. Well, you're not alone if you've ever felt that way. So often couples will ask me how to handle situations when they both disagree strongly. So they might ask, if I see things dramatically different, am I the contentious one? Or if I disagree with him or her, am I being disrespectful and argumentative?
Honestly, it's such a relief to me to remember that differences are normal. So often we think that a good marriage means seeing eye to eye on everything, but that just isn't true. And one of my favorite statistics from Dr. John Gottman, who's one of the leading researchers on marriage, he's found that 69% of couple conflicts are perpetual. And that means many issues don't get solved, rather they must be managed. And we think that those differences should actually be celebrated, not discouraged.
Here's an example. Achy knees and an achy back. It's just not going to go away. I'm sorry. That's how actually Dr. John Gottman describes those perpetual issues that just will always be there. But that doesn't mean we lay down and give up.
No. But I tell couples that a lot in session because I think it's so encouraging to remember that, yeah, it is normal to have differences. All relationships will have that, and quite a few, but they can be managed and worked out. So in healthy couples, most find that their core guiding principles and values are aligned and similar with very little deviation. And that's why it's so important that every couple would be wise to have this discussion very early on in their relationship.
As therapists, we often work with premarital couples, and we always recommend that in the early stages of their relationship development, that they have a conversation about the non-negotiables or the deal breakers or what they hold as most important. So we counsel couples to clearly identify and define their core values. Talk about them. That's at the core, the center of their existence. And talk about them with each other so that they can find clarity and understanding and avoid the heartache and conflict and damaging emotional injuries that can happen down the road. Core values are at the center of our soul and are typically, research tells us it's solidified by the age of 12. So flexibility in all other areas of a couple's shared life should occupy a much larger space. We want to avoid compromise of our core values because compromise means giving up something. And if it's a non-negotiable, we will have internal conflict. Whereas collaboration actually means coming together to find common ground.
Yeah, again, back to Dr. Gottman, he talks about it's your bones and you can't give away your bones. It's that solidified in us. And so I love thinking of it that way. And we also tend to kind of avoid these conversations because we're afraid they're going to end in miserable fights. But when we avoid hard discussions, it creates quiet walls. I like that term, quiet walls that block access to the deep connections we long for with each other. What distinguishes healthy and resilient couples from those who become fragile and unfulfilled is how the couple handles the discussion and exploration about differences, and then the way they arrive at an ultimate shared decision together. When we feel strongly about a certain direction we believe should be taken, and one or the other submits to the pressure of that, they emotionally shut down, they can withdraw, and that partner risks long-term damage and attachment injuries in the relationship as a result.
And that's just so sad when it happens, but it does. And it tends to be normal. But what we like to do is a discussion like this that gives you ideas of things that you can do. But I think first, it's helpful to talk about some common areas of disagreement. Disagreement and differences of opinion are normal, but many couples find themselves disagreeing on a variety of areas, like, for example, finances, differences in spending habits. We grew up in different families and we have tendencies that are different. We've witnessed modeling in different ways. Financial goals or attitudes toward money can often lead to conflict. Another one is communication styles. Each person has a different way of talking and preferences or tendencies about how to talk about things that can lead to misunderstandings, assumptions, and ultimate frustration. Now, another classic one is intimacy and the sexual relationship. There's always, or often, I should say, discrepancies in libido or sexual drive and preferences in the sexuality of their relationship, comfort levels with intimacy. These can create tension in a relationship, and when they're not talked about, they can cause long-term hurts and emotional distance. And then another one that's a classic, household chores and responsibilities. I remember I had a professor in my undergraduate program. The whole entire semester was talking about roles and goals in a family and how working together is the glue that helps a family stay together. But if there's unequal distribution of household chores or differing standards of cleanliness, which we might see if we don't talk about it, we will assume that there's different standards of cleanliness. It can lead to arguments and really painful contention.
I'm just going to throw this in. I just read an article that put a value on what you would pay a housewife for her year's work, and it's $200,000 a year right now. So I added up the 45 years I've been doing it, and my husband owes me $9 million.
That's good. Oh, can you write that up in a contract? I wonder how he would take that. I think your sweetheart would agree.
Yeah. It's with chores, it is often a point of contention, and to be respectful of some of those things. So I'm just going to add to your list, Debbie. So parenting styles, couples may disagree on how to raise children, discipline strategies, or educational approaches. Oh my goodness. Yes, I'm flashing through my own mind some of these things in my own family. Family dynamics, conflicts may arise from differences in how each partner interacts with their respective families or in-laws. I mean, that's a big one too. In-laws, right? That's tricky stuff. We deal with that in our practice. Career and ambitions, disagreements may occur over career choices, work-life balance, or even aspirations for the future. Those can be really tricky conversations. And then religion and beliefs. There's variances in religious or spiritual beliefs or lack thereof. And this can lead to tension if that's not handled respectfully.
Here's a hot one, political beliefs. This is a tough one, and it comes up regularly. Every couple of years, we've got these, it rises up, it's in the news, and differences of opinion on political beliefs or ideologies can be really painful and polarizing. So, the most helpful way to navigate these kinds of differences is to establish what you do agree on. Couples forget to do that, and that might be difficult, but many political stances are rooted in deeper values. So if you remove the political ideology and just go to the values like fairness, safety, freedom, or compassion for other humans, for humanity, when couples identify their shared values, they often find common ground, even if they differ on political beliefs and policies. Another one is leisure activities and hobbies. Now, here's an example. My husband is an avid fly fisherman. I am not, and I'm fine with that. And so is he. He loves football. My eyes glaze over when they talk about football, and football season appears. And I'm like, well, I'm going to be a widow for a few months. I'm fine with that because he has such a passion for it. But we do share other things like, travel. So differences in interests or preferences for how to spend free time can cause friction if not adequately addressed and to find the correct balance. Now, another one, we keep using this word, but this podcast is all about values and priorities. So, disagreements can arise when partners prioritize different aspects of life, when they put greater weight on different things, such as personal growth. Here's one: exercise, weight management, and travel and community involvement or material possessions. It's a big one. So, another one that is really a classic is jealousy, insecurity, trust issues. Insecurities or trust issues can and may surface, leading to conflicts over jealousy and misunderstood boundaries or perceived infidelity. If, for example, a couple hasn't talked about the importance of not having close relationships with the opposite sex, or talking about personal things with a business partner or a business co-worker, if that's not discussed, it can cause serious issues down the road. And then health and lifestyle choices. I mentioned weight management and exercise, but disagreements can occur on dietary choices, habits of exercise, or decisions related to health care in general.
Yeah, and keep adding to some of the places where we can have differences, living arrangements. Couples may have different preferences or priorities about where to live. So some want to live in an urban situation versus a suburban environment, renting versus buying, or proximity to family. Social life and friendships, conflicts can arise from differences in socializing preferences, boundaries with friends, or the inclusion or exclusion of certain individuals. Another place there can be disagreements is time management. Disagreements over how you spend your time together, or how you individually spend your time, or other issues related to punctuality. That's a big one. That can lead to a lot of tension.
Yeah, we laugh because we know that it's normal and it happens for most everyone. But I think we've listed some great common things that people disagree on. But let's talk about some steps that we can take to embrace and celebrate differences. Embrace, notice instead of avoid conflict and avoid differences. First, I want to encourage our listeners and remind myself not to fear those differences. We're each distinctly and beautifully different in personality, in physical and emotional characteristics. But those differences really do require us to be respectful and validate them, that the ones that rise up within the relationship. So, first step, big one, begin by identifying and adhering to those core values. We've already talked about that. These are the things we hold dear and typically are solidified early. So it's helpful to take some time to reflect on what truly matters: honesty, integrity, loyalty. We've talked about those, but then to identify them openly and explicitly. Most people have a strong sense of what their values are, but couples forget to talk about them. And down the road, talk about them again. Staying true to those values and morals is truly essential for a fulfilling relationship and authentic life in general.
Yeah, so Debbie, step one is to identify those core values, like you just said. And then step two, if there's a decision that's made that makes you feel uneasy, then ask yourself, which of my core values is being compromised? Again, I always just think of the bones John Gottman talks about. There's something so innate in us. And as you said, in place by the time we're 12 years old. And so it's impossible to give someone our bones or our core values. We just can't compromise on that. So if you submit to a decision that directly conflicts with your core values, you will experience internal conflict that won't go away. And we become in danger of developing resentment and bitterness towards our partners and anyone else involved in that decision.
Especially if we don't talk about it. If we just compartmentalize it and say, well, it doesn't matter, I'll just go to keep peace. That isn't conducive for a healthy relationship. So, to avoid the dangers of disconnection and relationship damage due to differences in beliefs or whatever, anything that we've talked about today, here's an example. Honey, if we take that much money out of our savings, it will take us decades to replace it. I'm worried about that. It might prevent us from being able to send our son to college. Can we talk about this? Another example would be, I'm concerned that if we don't impose consequences on our daughter for skipping school, she'll never learn the importance of accountability, responsibility. Letting her go without consequences can be damaging. So I'm not okay with that. Can we talk about how to handle this situation?
Yes, so as you said, we identify the core value, we identify the way it's compromised, and then we have the opportunity to voice that concern and to ask our partner to share how they feel about the situation and kind of instigate a collaborative middle ground approach. And this can be done by asking your partner to help you understand their point of view and why they're averse to applying certain consequences. I love the phrases we use all the time in our work. Please help me understand, or what would you like me to understand about this, can really help set the stage for calm, meaningful discussions. And then listening, to listen deeply to their responses. We know that resilient couples address disagreements and differences of opinion openly and respectfully. They communicate clearly and they work towards finding compromises or solutions that are mutually satisfactory. We see wise couples who sit down and discuss each of these areas without judgment for each other. They learn how to explore each other's experiences and these values and principles differently.
We're talking about the ideal, Sherilyn. This takes practice. And all of these ideas that we've shared won't happen the first time, the second time, maybe even the third time. Give yourselves a little wiggle room to struggle with this. But the main thing is to put it on the table and listen, seek understanding. The three most important words you said, Sherilyn, you said it. Help me understand, and then be willing to seek understanding. So it's important now. Here's where you keep track and you say, let's write down specific thoughts and feelings that we've talked about as a couple and work to honor each other's strongest, most important core values. Write down what we committed to, revisit it next week and say, do we still feel good about this? Is there some way we can tweak this and find a collaborative middle ground? Keep the discussion slow. That is key in our work, Sherilyn, with our couples. Number one, slow pace to keep it emotionally safe. Listen and acknowledge by saying, okay, this is what I'm hearing. Did I get it right? Validate each other's feelings, saying, that's really difficult for me to hear, but I hear you. And I want to understand that. That's a powerful investment in collaborative and loving relationships. And then couples who take these steps experience greater confidence in their future, and actually their children thrive. Do you want to talk about that briefly?
Yeah, as you were talking, I was just thinking the byproduct of this is you're modeling now for children how to handle conflict, how to not be afraid of it, how to do it, and what a gift to your children when you can do this as a couple.
Yeah. You lit up when I said that. I could see that. And that is true. The research tells us that couples who communicate and stabilize their relationship and understand their differences, children thrive. They really do rise up and do better and become better humans. So therefore what? Sherilyn, do you want to go first?
I just and add one more thing there for what, as again, as you're talking, what we've learned in our work is in these very places is where the deepest connection happens. When something like this can be worked through by a couple, then the connection is so deep. And so we just, yeah, if we can do it and not be afraid of it, it's such an opportunity actually for things to be even better than before. So my takeaway, my therefore what this week, I'm a follower of Jesus Christ. And I loved a recent idea I heard that Christ not only helps us avoid conflict, but he also helps us to learn how to create total reconciliation and redemption with another in our differences. And so that's the takeaway for me, is to not only avoid conflict in my important relationships, but to seek the Savior's grace in creating total reconciliation and redemption with them. That's my takeaway.
That is so beautiful. You're there for what is centered on the Savior. And I was thinking in the same line about the Savior who taught us humility. This is really practicing humility and eliminating pride. And if we look at the way the Savior lived and follow his example, humility is tough as humans. When we get hurt, we struggle with humility. Pride takes over, insecurity develops. But if we follow these steps, my therefore what is practice doesn't make perfect, practice makes better. So that's my takeaway today. And I want to thank everyone for listening. Thank you so much. And please continue to follow us and send us feedback.